Mr. Chifokoro, that we achieved all of them. And then we have our targets for this year, 2021. And so far, I think we are happy. We have grown the membership of our party, and we have received a lot of commitment from the Zambian people. You know, we are not like the other two major political parties who have a big pace and who are able to pay people to follow them. If they're holding a rally, they pick people up in buses and give them 50 kwachas lunch money. We are not able to do that. For us, the people who follow us because they believe in our party and they believe in what we stand for. And we are glad that we are growing a significant following despite the high levels of poverty in this country, because given high levels of poverty, you would expect that people generally would go for a bigger political party which is able to give them money at the end of every meeting, as opposed to our kind of party where we don't pay allowances, so to speak, for people attending a meeting. We just facilitate the logistics. So we are happy with the commitment of the Zambian people and the way they are warming up towards our party, and that gives us a lot of hope towards the 12th of August this year.
Let me come to you, the running mate, Mr. Mle. The question will come to say, out of all the political parties that we have in Zambia, why is it that you decided to be running mate to Sean Tembo? What is it that convinced you to join the PEP family?
You know, for me, I believe politics is about ideologies. It's not a career for survival. If you look at the political parties in Zambia today, you'll find that our party has the most sound ideology. And if you look at also the way that we look at opposition politics, we don't see it as a way to quarrel with people, but as a way of providing alternative solutions to the problems which we have here in the country. So for me, it's a no-brainer. PEP is the best option, and I couldn't see anything better than PEP when I was looking at the options around.
You talked about 2020, you know, you managed to meet your objectives, some of your objectives, and you talked about despite the shrinking political space. We are in 2021, and the elections will be held on the 12th of August 2021. What is it that you feel or you think should change in order for what you experienced in 2020 when it comes to shrinking political space should not occur this year, 2021?
I think number one, it's the issue of how this COVID pandemic is being handled vis-a-vis our ability to mobilize and campaign. If you look at what has been happening in the recent past, the Patriotic Front and this government have been using the COVID-19 pandemic as an excuse to prevent us in the opposition from being able to mobilize on the ground and meet our people, while they themselves are able to do that freely. So if there's anything that we would like to change, we would like the Electoral Commission of Zambia, ECZ, to grow some teeth so that they can come up with the regulations of how political parties are going to go about conducting their campaigns in view of the current COVID situation. And once those guidelines are developed by ECZ, they need to be able to apply across the board equally, regardless of whether it's a ruling party or an opposition, so that no one is given an upper hand, as the case is at the moment. And I know that the argument that ECZ may bring forward is that it's not yet official campaign period. But we all know that we have been campaigning. Pretty much everybody who is serious has been campaigning ever since the last general election. What only differs is the intensity of the campaigns. So ECZ should be able to come up with the regulations immediately.
Don't you think you're asking too much from ECZ? They'll tell you, say they've got a lot to do this year. They're preparing for 2021 election, issues to do with the new register, issues to do with ballot papers, and you still want them to do more. Don't you think you're asking too much from the Electoral Commission of Zambia?
It's not too much. It's not too much, because what we are talking about here is the issue of the lives of the Zambian people. vis-a-vis the democracy of this country. On one hand, Kelvin, we have the need for our political dispensation, our democratic tenets to continue, you understand? Hence the need to, or rather, hence the necessity to hold the election on the 12th of August despite the COVID pandemic. You understand? We want our democracy to be sustainable and to outlive any challenges that might be there at any given time. So that is on one hand. On the other hand, we need to be able to protect the lives of the Zambian people. Because if we don't, then even if Sean Tembo and Pep wins, even if Mr. Edgar Lungu wins, even if Mr. Akainde Ichilema wins, if there are no people to preside over, to lead, then what's the point of being president? There's no point. So the issue of managing the COVID situation is critical. And on the other hand, the issue of ensuring that our democratic tenets still proceed is also critical. Hence the need for the Electoral Commission of Zambia to reconcile the two so that we can proceed with our democratic activities, but bearing in mind and taking the necessary precautions against the COVID-19 pandemic. And that can only happen if ECZ comes up with the necessary regulations and ensures that they are enforced equitably and fairly across the board to all political parties. So that even as I go and meet my people on the ground to do a meet and greet in the structures, wherever it is, whether it's in Nambwe, in Central Province, or it is in Sesheke, Southern Province, I know that these are the do's and don'ts that I can engage in as I meet my people.
For Electoral Commission of Zambia to come up with what you're proposing, they need to engage stakeholders. The Minister of Health, the Minister of Local Government will be engaged. And you've got ministers who have been appointed by the President. Are you not going to cry foul at the end to say, it is the minister who introduced this, it is this minister who said add this, and politics again will be involved?
Not at all, Kelvin. You know, at the end of the day, these institutions might be affiliated to the government, like the Electoral Commission of Zambia. We know that they draw their budget from the Ministry of Finance, and we know that the Minister of Finance is a PF member. You understand? But since this is a constitutional office, which is independent, the expectation is that the people in there will still act above board. It is the same concept like the way you look at the judicial system, where you've got judges of the High Court, of the Supreme Court, who are paid by the government, whose conditions of service are set by the government of the day. But when you sue the government, the same people who pay their salaries, the expectation is that the judicial officers will act independently and be able to rule in a fair and equitable manner. So that is the same thing that we are asking from the Electoral Commission of Zambia. They might be funded by the PF government. They might consult from the Ministry of Health, which is run by the PF government. They might consult from the Ministry of Finance, which is run by the PF government. But at the end of the day, what we are asking from them is that after they do their consultation, when they come up with the regulations, those regulations need to be fair and objective, and they need to enforce those regulations fairly and equitably across the board to all the political players.
Let me come to you, Mr. Mble. The President has talked about the Electoral Commission of Zambia coming up with modalities that are going to be fair, and he has talked about the Electoral Commission of Zambia being, independent. According to you, do you think or do you still feel that the Electoral Commission of Zambia will have what it takes to conduct the 2021 general election in a fair manner?
Yes. I believe in the ECZ, and I believe they have what it takes to run an election. I think what is needed mostly, especially from us as stakeholders, is just support and give them a proper message in terms of what we really want from them. Like the President was talking about, I think what is missing here is ECZ stepping in. Because what is happening is you will find that these ministries, like Ministry of Home Affairs, has taken a front row through the Public Order Act. And through that, they are squeezing out opposition political parties and giving a leeway to the ruling party. But what we are expecting is the rules which we are talking about here are rules which are implemented not by political players. Because when we talk about Ministry of Home Affairs, for example, it is directly being led by a political opponent. But what we want is to take it to an institution which we made as the citizens of Zambia through the Constitution, to be able to be the referee, because ECZ is expected to be the referee in the elections. So what we want is move the powers to them as much as we can. Otherwise, in terms of confidence, we have confidence in the ECZ, and we believe this is an institution which can run these elections and make them run.
Your fellow political parties or political party leaders have called the Electoral Commission of Zambia to be arrogant. They have said even if we advise the Electoral Commission of Zambia, they don't listen. Even if we take proposals to the Electoral Commission of Zambia, they don't take those things into consideration. Here you are, Mr. Mleya, you're talking about support. What kind of support is it that you're going to give to the Electoral Commission of Zambia, which you've not given or other political parties have not given to the Electoral Commission of Zambia?
Let me tell you what the difference is. Most of these political parties are seeing the ECZ as their opponent. And when you talk about suggestions, you are giving an input. Now, when I'm giving an input to an independent commission like CZ, I'm not expecting them to take everything that I say. Because if that happens, then the independence is already taken away. So the difference between how we see ECZ and how our friends see ECZ is that we see ECZ as an independent commission. Our friends see ECZ as a competitor or something that they want to take over. You know, for us, we have a very different concept of independence. If really we want to have an independent ECZ, we need to allow the people in ECZ to make the final decision. They should not be influenced by us in the opposition. They should not be influenced by people who are in the ruling party. And that's what any Democrat needs to think like. Otherwise, if I think if they don't take my idea, then they are not independent. But if they take my idea, then now they are independent. No. We need to allow ECZ to operate independently. We give input, then let them make the final decision. If it goes our way, fine. If it doesn't go our way, they are an independent commission.
President Tembo, with what has been happening at the Electoral Commission of Zambia, people cried in 2020 that don't scrap off the old voter register, just clean it up. People talked about the period that was given for voter registration. People talked about manpower at the Electoral Commission of Zambia. At the end of it all, others concluded and said the Electoral Commission of Zambia is being controlled by the ruling party. With what has happened in 2020, now we are in 2021 and we're expected to use a new voter register come 12th of August. Do you still believe that the Electoral Commission of Zambia is independent and all those decisions that they took them as independent, or there was an invisible hand from government?
Well, from our standpoint, Kelvin, like my presidential running mate, Mr. Henry, indicated earlier, we hold our state institutions in high regard, unless otherwise they prove themselves that they are not to be held in high regard. And when we look at the Electoral Commission of Zambia, first of all, I must mention that we have been on record when it comes to the voter registration process. We have been on record siding with the positions of ECZ when it came to the issue of online voter pre-registration. We looked at that, and we felt that that was something that was progressive. Our fellow opposition political parties did not share our sentiments, and we respect that. They felt that the online voter pre-registration will be used to rig the electoral process. They felt that the online voter pre-registration will disadvantage people, especially in rural areas who don't have access to phones. And we said, look, when you really critically look at the requirement of ECZ regarding the online voter pre-registration, it does not say that whichever potential voter that does not do online pre-registration will not be allowed to do the physical registration. It doesn't say that. It's just an added feature which will quicken the process, so that if you capture your details in advance and you go to a registration center, the time it takes to register can be reduced. That is the way we looked at it. But our colleagues disagreed, and we respected that. I think we shared a lot of bad words with our colleagues in the UPND and NDC regarding that particular issue. But for us, Kelvin, we understand the electoral process. And based on my professional background as a forensic auditor, I know in any given system, I know which areas are vulnerable to manipulation. And I know which areas are quite resistant to manipulation. So if I take you through the entire electoral process from the end of one election cycle to the other, I will be able to point out to say these are the red areas. If you want to ensure that you protect your vote, these are the red areas where you need to focus your attention in. Those areas you are focusing your attention are not high-risk areas. So based on that point of view, we were able to give our view on these processes. When you look at the issue of the voter registration, the voter register, for example, there was an argument, a very heated argument, that coming up with a new register will disadvantage those who were on the old register, and some other arguments which I couldn't really understand. And for us, we shared a different point of view. We felt that it was more prudent to come up with a new register. Because if you are going to look at the possibility of manipulating a vote, for someone to manipulate a vote, they need to have redundant voters, which means voters who are on the register but have not cast their ballot. So those redundant voters will arise by two main ways. Number one, having dead people on the register, and number two, having a very low voter turnout. Because when you have a very low voter turnout, it means that there are people on the register who have not cast their vote. So someone can go to that register and manipulate it by casting a vote for those people who did not cast a vote. So those are the two key ways that a vote can be manipulated. Now, when you look at having an old voters register, which has been there for, let's say, 10 years, the number of people who have since relocated to other countries, the number of people who have since died are very, very high. And I remember having this discussion with one of the opposition leaders, I think, on one of the forums, and he was arguing, his argument was that, but even if you register a new register, by the time you go to vote, there will still be people who died there. Yes, they'll be there, but there will be fewer. There will be a few thousand compared to potentially millions if you look at a 10-year period. That is the point. So from our point of view, this voters register, which is a new one, has higher integrity compared to if we had just cleaned the old voters register. Remember, when you talk about cleaning, you are simply talking about removing people who you think have died. And in Zambia, we have a very poor system for keeping records, especially records of people who have died. A very poor system. Ministry of Health keeps their own records, the local authorities, the councils keep their own records. It's just a bit chaotic. And the risk that not all the people who had died will be removed from the voters register is very high. So our point of view is that the current voters register, which is a new one, has a higher level of integrity compared
with the challenges that we are faced, with the challenges that people face in different provinces, issues to do with machines, issues to do with manpower, issues to do with the equipment to use. And in other provinces, rumor has it that numbers have reduced compared to the numbers that were in the, that was in the old register. Are you comfortable with the new voter register that we're going to use come August 12th?
Well, like I indicated, Kelvin, for us, we were not happy with the issue of the extension. We felt that that 1 week extension was not enough, and we issued a statement to that effect to say, look, we argued with this is it. We even wrote to them to say, look, this 1 week is not enough. The reason we said that 1 week was not enough is because even on the last day of voter registration, there were long queues. So that shows you that there are still plenty of people who want to register. It was going to be different if on the last day of registration, the voter registration centers were empty. Then we would have said, everyone who wants to register has registered. But there were still queues on the last day. And we disagreed with ECZ on the issue of extension. We felt that ECZ needed to extend the voter registration process maybe by an additional week or two. That is what we felt. So we are not happy about that part. But like my Vice President and running mate, Mr. Henry, indicated earlier, given that ECZ is an independent institution, sometimes they agree with our point of view. Sometimes they don't agree with our point of view. The issue of extending the voter registration process is a case in point where they didn't agree with our point of view. And as much as we are aggrieved, we respect that because we take it that they are an independent institution. Coming to your question of whether we have confidence in the electoral system and confidence in the Electoral Commission of Zambia to conduct the electoral process this year. I think our view is that yes, we are. ECZ has a lot of challenges, and there are a lot of things that they can improve on. But overall, I think substantively, I think they are capable of conducting an election, and whatever result that will come from that election, we shall respect it.
Let's go to what just happened. The Auditor General's report is out, and one of the ministries that has been caught napping is the Ministry of Health. The scandals there, first of all, they failed to substantiate or explain how they used 63 million kwacha. Then the issue of the medical kits that were supplied, the defective condoms, defective gloves, as well as expired medicine. And a lot of people have added their voice to this. If Tembo was president of the Republic of Zambia, and the revelations that came out through that Parliamentary Accounts Committee, how best could you have handled the issue and the scandals at the Ministry of Health?
Yeah, you know, our view as a party and our policy and approach for fighting corruption is, among other things, to allow various institutions to operate independently. When you look at our criminal justice system, we have quite an efficient criminal justice system, and we have quite competent law enforcement agencies. Whether you talk about the Drug Enforcement Commission, the Anti-Corruption Commission, or the Zambia Police, they are competent people. The only challenge that is there is that most of the time they are not able to operate freely. They always have to look out for political considerations. Is it okay if we can go against, go after Mr. Kelvin Chifokoro, or he's a key member of HPANI? Is it okay if we can go after Mr. Tembo? Is it okay if we can go after Mr. Honeybee? The moment law enforcement agencies start doing that, then their ability to discharge their mandate is compromised. So under my administration, under Tembo presidency, one of the first things that we are going to do is allow law enforcement to operate independently. If my running mate, who will at that time be my vice president, his nephew tenders somewhere and he wins a tender, and the Anti-Corruption Commission feels that there was something fishy in the award of that tender, they should not be coming to me as president to get permission to investigate a nephew to my vice president. They shouldn't. They should just go about their job as if he is not a vice president, as if that person is not a nephew to the vice president.
Are you saying this? Is this what is happening? Are they waiting for a directive from president, the president?
And apparently,
said, I don't know why. I don't know what they are waiting for. No. It is clear. Things are in public domain.
It has always been like that. And unfortunately, this particular problem is not only unique to the PF government. It has traditionally been there. Even when the MMD government was there, it was the same. Even when the UNIP government was there, it was the same. Of course, it was better during UNIP government because most of the time the president, who was KK at that time, would give the go-ahead to have his key party member investigated. It was only on rare occasions that he would say, no, not that one, or not at this particular moment. But as it is right now, the PF leadership, which includes President Edgar Lungu, use law enforcement agencies as a tool for fighting their political rivals. Even within the HPANI, even within the party, they use them as tools to fight their political opponents. That is the reason why when a minister is charged and taken to court, to the magistrate's court, for example, all they need to do is go there with the buses full of cadres carrying placards saying ECL for life. And once they do that, you can be assured that within a week they will be acquitted.
Mr. Mle,
yes, please.
If you were the vice president to President Tembo, and what happened at the ministry happened in your leadership, what sort of advice could you have given to the president in handling the issues at the Ministry of Health?
Yeah, I think every problem requires to understand the genesis. And I think the genesis of most of the problems we are having in our country today comes from interference, as we are saying, political interference. Let me tell you one thing. There is a notion now that there are people that are above the law. And how are these people above the law? All you need is be as close as possible to the powers that be. But from our point of view, if we were in power today, it is one of our key reforms, actually. If you look at our PEP manifesto, it's one of our key reforms. And the key reforms is to retain power to the institutions of governance, allow each institution to be able to operate within the confines of the law which established it, other than working through my voice or through the voice of the president. So the key thing that I would have done myself as a vice president would to sit down with the president and say, look, there's this scandal. Where is it coming from? What is involved in it? We are looking at an issue here. We are not looking at human beings. We are not saying who is involved. We are saying what is an issue here and what is the genesis. And I can tell you one of the key, the genesis of this issue is appeasement of the ruling party. There are so many people that are getting contracts which they are not supposed to get because at the end of the day, part of that money will end up in the chipani, you see. So if I was vice president, the key thing would be let's allow the institutions of governance to descend there. Auditor General has already done the job. They've blown the whistle. The next thing is let's allow Anti-Corruption Commission to go in for any issues that are corruption related. Let's allow the police to go there for other criminal activities which may be going on there. In short, it is institutions which we should allow to retain the powers they have. They should work without fear or favor.
Mr. Tembo.
Yeah, just to add on that, you know, comrade, if you look at the Zambia Public Procurement Act, for example, it is very strict. And its regulations, the 2011 regulations, are very stringent. But when you look at the type of scandals which are there, it just shows that there is no compliance to what the law provides. Because like one of the companies which was awarded a tender, and that company at the time of awarding a tender, it was not incorporated as a limited liability company. There are very specific provisions of the Zambia Public Procurement Act which clearly state that for a legal entity to do business with government, it has to be incorporated. It has to be incorporated as a company. And so you see that abrogation. And the reason you have that abrogation is because even the officers there in these ministries, they get confused because at one time, if it is a key member of the Chipani involved, they are taught to bend the rules. You understand? Then they are taught to follow the rules the rest of the time. If you submit a tender to the ministry, they will follow the rules to the letter. If you didn't put a full stop or a comma, they will disqualify your tender. But if it is a key member of the Chipani, they will ask them to bend the rules. So those officers in government get confused also. They can't, sometimes they can't remember whether they're supposed to bend the rules or they're supposed to follow the rules. And that is how you find all these funny procurements taking place. Tenders being awarded by government to companies that have been dissolved, a company that is not in existence. How do you award a big tender worth hundreds of thousands of pounds to a company that has been dissolved? So it all arises because of bending the rules. You know, when you have rules, even in the house, you need to follow them all the time. If you bend the rules sometimes and follow the rules sometimes, even the children will not respect your authority. Because when you enforce your rules on one child, and yet yesterday you were bending the rules on the other child, that child, the other child will complain, and fairly so, and say, but why are you enforcing these rules on me? You were bending these rules on my young brother or my young sister yesterday. And they'll have a legitimate complaint. So when you set up rules, you need to enforce them fairly and equitably and consistently across the board.
Now we have a new minister in charge of health. The president terminated the appointment of Mansa Central Member of Parliament, Dr. Chitotiri was minister. Others have argued to say he has been fired because of the scandals that have continued to happen in the Ministry of Health. Others have argued to say probably the Mansa Central Member of Parliament was not fired because of the scandals. Now that is fired, Is that enough?
Well, from our point of view, it's not. It doesn't even begin to address the issue, because the issue which is there is that the people who supplied medical supplies to the Ministry of Health supplied expired medicines and leaking gloves and condoms. And so we expected a senior member of government, whether the president himself or the secretary to cabinet or any senior member, to address the nation and provide an explanation on how this came about. How did it arise? How did the systems fail, which were supposed to detect this? Because for starters, Kelvin, at all ports of entry in this country, we have an office of the Zambia Bureau of Standards. And the Zambia Bureau of Standards will check each and every piece of equipment, each and every piece of medical supplies that comes into the country. And when you look at those medical supplies, there's an expiry date there on that consignment. So what happened? Why didn't someone see that these things are expired? Someone was saying that, no, the Zambia Bureau of Standards actually advised the ministry. They saw that and they advised the ministry. That is a failure in itself, because why should the Zambia Bureau of Standards advise the ministry on expired goods? They have a mandate not to allow expired goods into this country. That is their mandate, not allowing them and advising the ministry. That is a failure on their part. So the system failed from the time those goods entered the country to the time that they were authorized for distribution by the Zambia Medicines Regulatory Authority, ZAMRA. Those guys do tests. Why didn't they detect that those things were expired and the condoms and gloves were leaking? Why didn't they do that? So there's a total failure of the system. Now, someone might ask to say, why do you want a senior official of government to address the nation on that issue and provide an explanation? Before we even talk about prosecuting anybody, we need a proper explanation from government. The reason why that is important is because people, especially the public, need to have confidence in the medical supplies provided by the Ministry of Health. This failure has to be explained so that we know that this is what went wrong here, this is what went wrong at ZAB's point, this is what went wrong at ZAMRA point, and this is the measures that government has put in place to ensure that this scandal does not happen again, to ensure that the lives of the Zambian people are not needlessly exposed the way they have been. So there has to be that assurance, and that is the reason why it's important for government to explain itself regarding this Honeybee scandal. The other reason is that the amount of money that is involved there. It's huge amounts of money. And you need to assure taxpayers that your tax kwachas are not being wasted by government, so that they can have the appetite to remit their taxes tomorrow. It's very critical for the public to be assured that their government is not wasteful, that when they pay their tax either through pay as you earn or any other way, that money is put to good use. It's very important for you to have a larger tax compliance appetite among the population. So that is the reason why we are insisting. And the other issue is that when President Lungu fired Honorable Shitaru, he did not provide a reason as to why he had fired him. So our view is that it is wrong for any citizen of this country to speculate that the reason why Dr. Shitaru Chirofya was fired is because of the Honeybee scandal. Because that is mere speculation. Because there's no connection.
Others are saying because the letter that was issued from State House was also speculative. And people have got every reason to also speculate.
Yeah, so
don't you think it was supposed to start from State House? The letter was supposed to be, to be clear.
Yes.
Avoid speculation. Now that the letter was not clear,
that is exactly,
and that is why we are having speculations.
That is exactly my point.
And every Zambian has got a right to speculate and conclude.
That is exactly my point. Yes. So there is no clear linkage between the scandal and the termination of the minister's services as a minister of health. That is why, from our point of view, this issue of the scandal has not been addressed by government up to now. More than 2 weeks after the Parliamentary Accounts Committee of Parliament actually unveiled this scandal. through his sittings. So we are waiting for the president, as head of government, to actually address this issue. If the president is too shy to address the nation, then he can delegate to any of his other officers. He can delegate to the secretary to cabinet. He can delegate to any other officer. But government, a senior official of government, has to address the nation on this particular scandal.
Mr. Tembo, the company that is at the center of this scandal, Honeybee, has denied that those medical kits which were supplied, the defective condoms, gloves, and expired medicines were not supplied by Honeybee. And they have argued to say those medical kits were tested in India and they have got a certificate. And they have continued to say they are just these are just fights that are coming from their competitors. They have denied, and they're saying this is fake news.
Well, their explanations are noted. However, I think there is need. That is why we have always insisted from our point of view that this matter has to be thoroughly investigated by government, and we need an official position of government. Once we have an official position of government, then we can weigh the explanations provided by this party and the explanations provided by government. But so far, we don't have any official position on this matter, not even by the Ministry of Health itself. The only submissions we have from government are from those government officials who appeared before the Parliamentary Accounts Committee. Hence, our demand to President Lungu or any of the senior officers of government to issue a formal statement on this matter so that we can have a formal statement from government and then look at it vis-a-vis the statement from Honeybee. However, it is worth noting that this scandal did not come 2 weeks ago at the Parliamentary Accounts Committee. This scandal was first reported by the media more than 6 months ago. It was first reported more than 6 months ago. So if Honeybee's explanation is genuine, then the question which any reasonable Zambian would ask is, where were they ever since this matter was first widely reported in the media more than 6 months ago? Where were they? Were they out of Were they out of the country? Did they go for a visit to the moon? Where were they? Because this matter was reported widely in Zambia. So why didn't they issue this statement, which we saw was very comprehensive? Why didn't they issue it 6 months ago when this matter first came into the public domain? Because the way it appears to us is that that statement was more of an afterthought by the company in question. It was more like an afterthought. If it wasn't an afterthought, they should have issued that statement the moment that the matter arose. Because you're talking about the integrity of the company here. If I'm running a company and someone writes something malicious about my company, I'll immediately respond. In fact, I'll spend the whole night drafting the statement, so that early in the morning, before the journalists leave their newsrooms, they have my statement, our response on their table. You cannot take 6 months to respond to a matter as grave as that.
Mr. Mlea, the Anti-Corruption Commission as well as the Human Rights Commission told the nation. For the anti-corruption, they said they've been investigating the issues of Honeybee since August 2020. And they say that it has reached an advanced stage. From August, this is January. And now there are these other revelations that have come. What do you think and also the president talked about these investigative wings not waiting for him. He said for long they have been abused by other administrations, that they should seek permission from the president to say, oh, Mr. President, there is this issue we are asking, can we investigate or can we interrogate this minister? But he said, for me, I'm just watching. They don't have to come to me to ask for permission.
Yeah, but that's not true, because I think the president is on record complaining that the Anti-Corruption Commission was targeting his ministers. So that's laughable when the president says he doesn't want them to ask him questions. And that's where you see the inertia. Because you've seen that some people linked to Honeybee have been found to have serious links to the president. And I think that explains why Anti-Corruption Commission has taken this long. Because as they do their investigations and they find that this person who is involved is very close to the presidency, I think their hands become tied. they need now to seek permission from State House for them to proceed. So for me, I don't agree that President Lungu has left the Anti-Corruption Commission to work freely. I can tell you in my private capacity, one of my employees was involved in an issue where I asked him to report to the Anti-Corruption Commission. They still needed to get clearance. And yet this was a case, a smaller case compared to the Honeybee case. So the issue of getting permission from above there is still there. It is still there. So let's not be cheated or be made to believe that the president is not interested in protecting his people. He was on record saying Anti-Corruption Commission wanted to target his ministers. And what did he do through that statement? He was telling them, back off. Leave my ministers alone. If you want to do anything with them, come through me.
Mr. Tembo, on Thursday, the new Minister of Health, Dr. Jonas Chanda, made an appeal to Zambians or to citizens to say, don't lose confidence in the Minister of Health because of the few glitches that have happened in the Ministry of Health. Others took this as an insult to say a lot has been happening at the ministry, and the minister cannot just say these are few glitches. And also, I remember after the shootings on the 23rd of December, after the firing of the then deputy IG in charge of operation, the president told the IG that he needs to bring back the confidence in the Zambian people. People have lost confidence in the Zambia police, and also the Minister of Health acknowledged and made an appeal that don't lose confidence in the Ministry of Health. Why is it that Zambians are losing confidence in some government institutions as well as ministries?
I think from our point of view, the loss of confidence that you see in these government departments and government ministries are just symptomatic. The real loss of confidence is in the presidency itself. I think the Zambian people have lost confidence in the Edgar Lungu government and the Patriotic Front as a political party. They have lost confidence, and they did not lose confidence yesterday or the other day. Our view is that they lost confidence a long time ago. The only challenge that the Zambian people had, in our view, is that they could not find a viable alternative to replace the Patriotic Front with. And the reason they have been reluctant to actually identify a viable alternative to replace the PF with is because of the mistake that the Zambian people made in 2011, where they replaced the then MMD government with the current PF government. A lot of Zambians that I've come in contact with personally have actually expressed their deep regret on that mistake which they made in 2011. And now when you fast forward to today, they are a bit reluctant to just jump onto the bandwagon, whichever bandwagon is going, for fear that they might make a similar mistake. And that is the reason why, on our part, as a political party, as PEP, when we formed ourselves in 2016, the first things that we did was to ensure that we have a strong base to use to demonstrate to the people that we are the right political party, that we are the right leadership to run the affairs of this nation. And that included the issue of being able to provide alternative solutions to national problems. Because you must remember that the PF of 2011 had nothing to show in terms of the plans for this country, what they would do for this country once put into office, other than the slogan. The only thing that they were armed with was a slogan, more money in your pocket. That is all they had. They had nothing else to show that they had any semblance of competence to properly run the affairs of this republic. And so you fast forward to this day, we are in 2021, we are going towards elections. The Zambian people have a viable option in the Patriots for Economic Progress. They have a viable option in Mr. Tembo and Mr. Henry Mulea, because we have something that we have put on the table, documented, not just verbally. We have been producing alternative solutions to this country since we were formed in 2016. And all these are well documented and available. Any Zambian out there who wants to scrutinize what kind of policies a PEP government will implement for this country can refer to those documents. And we did not stop there. We have continued up to this day. As we are speaking right now, on the 21st of this month, which I believe is Thursday, we are unveiling the PEP Alternative Economic Recovery Plan, which is a plan to turn around the economy. And that plan, it serves dual purposes, Mr. Chifokolo. It serves dual purposes. The first purpose that it serves is to assist the Patriotic Front to begin to mend the economy. Because the government itself unveiled their economic recovery plan through the president around December of last year. But when you look at that economic recovery plan by government, it is an empty piece of document because it doesn't even contain the basic ingredients of an economic recovery plan, or any plan for that matter. A basic plan, if you are going to turn around the economy, you need to get certain basics in place. You need to have a clear identification of the challenges that has caused the economy to go under, a clear identification.
Mr. Tembo,
let me just quickly finish.
We'll be coming to the issue of the alternative economic recovery plan.
Yes. So,
but still sticking with this, you've talked about Zambians losing confidence in the leadership of this country. And yes, I know that others will argue with you to say, how can Zambians lose confidence in a political party or a government that has delivered most of the promises that they've made that they made to the Zambian people? Development is everywhere, and people can see and attest to say, we have seen development in our areas. They have taken health services closer to the people. Secondary schools have been constructed, roads have been constructed, and I will tell you to say, people cannot lose confidence because we have delivered.
You know, if the PF government argued that they have delivered, I wouldn't argue with them if they did not specify to whom, because there are certain individuals in this country whose economy has been booming since the ascendance into office of a Patriotic Front, and most of these individuals are affiliated to the PF. So if the PF say the economy is booming, if they are referring to the economy of their supporters and cadres, then they are right. It is booming. But when you are talking about the economy of the rest of the Zambian people, the rest of the masses, it is not. The Zambian people, their quality of lives has been dwindling since time immemorial, ever since the PF came into office. Among other things that I do, I'm a farmer, and we sell chickens, mostly to the masses in the compounds. And the demand for chickens, you could see that 10 years ago, people would buy chicken as a cheaper source of protein compared to beef, because beef has been traditionally more expensive. So in the compounds, people will traditionally buy a chicken, because if they buy a chicken for 30 kwacha, 40 kwacha, then it will feed the entire family. But you fast forward to this day, very few people can afford chicken. We have gone back like in the counter times, whereby if you eat chicken in the house, the kids will get a small piece to go and show their neighbors, to go and shine to their neighbors. That is where we are going back to. You understand? So the general well-being of the Zambian people has dwindled, but the well-being of the Patriotic Front members and supporters, the economy of the president himself, it has boomed. It is in a boom. And that is the reason why President Lungu is always surprised and sometimes shocked when people complain that they are suffering. Yes. He's surprised because his personal economy has significantly boomed. So it has significantly taken a leap. And so when people are talking about hunger, he's shocked, he's surprised. Which hunger? You understand? So that is where the issue is.
Does it mean he's not connected to the ground? He doesn't know what is happening to his ordinary people?
He might be on the ground, he might be connected to the ground, but even at the ground there, the people he's connected with are people that he has unduly empowered. So they are thriving, they are doing well. You understand? He has extended tenders to them. If you look at a lot of these cadres.
But he has visited provinces and he has seen how people are suffering in these provinces.
Well, you know, when
probably
you visit,
there's no suffering. People are just enjoying life.
When you visit, you don't see a lot of what people would see who live there. Because especially as head of state, when you go to a particular area for a scheduled trip, they will do all sorts of things. They will patch potholes, they will do this, they will paint trees with rhyme. They will do all sorts of things. As you are driving there, you think you live in a very beautiful country. But as a matter of fact, you don't. If you want to get the reality on the ground, go on an unscheduled trip. Just start off, boom, and go to Chawama there and see how people are living, how people's houses are flooded due to lack of drainage. But if you are just driving in the highways there, you fly over your own overbridge and you feel like there's a lot of development in Lusaka. And yet there isn't much development in Lusaka, apart from the visible things that we are able to see from a distance. When you drill down to the ground, how people are actually living, and what it takes for people's standards of living to be improved, it's very little.
Don't you think it is people who are failing the president? Because the president cannot see or cannot go everywhere, but he has got members of parliament, he has got ministers, he has got councillors in all these areas, and these are the people that are supposed to be telling the president. If they're not telling the president, then why are you blaming the president?
Well, when you talk about the issue of delegation, Kevin, if you prefer to be surrounded by people who say sweet things to your ear, then sweet things is what you receive. They will not tell you reality because they know that reality will upset you. So you can clearly see that President Lungu has a high affinity to be surrounded by people who tell him sweet nothings, bootlickers and surrogates. We have seen that the few ministers that have said, that have spoken truth to power, ministers like Murusa, were quickly dismissed from government for telling the president that, look, Mr. President, these fire tenders that you have bought look like wheelbarrows. And for sure, they do look like wheelbarrows. What happened the following day, he was dismissed. On the other hand, another member of parliament,
the public was not told to say he has been dismissed because he likened the fire tenders to Uber.
On the other hand, another member of parliament who went to a fire tender and made a video inspecting a fire tender and praising the fire tender that it looks like a fifth generation piece of equipment, was quickly appointed as a minister to replace the one who condemned the fire tenders. So you can see the preference of the president. It is bootlickers and surrogates. And so if you are surrounded by bootlickers and surrogates, then you never get the truth of the reality on the ground. Nobody will come and tell you that people in Chazanga there, people in John Renge are failing to sleep because their houses are flooded. If houses are flooded, that is lack of drainage. You can create some drainage. We have our defense wings who have plenty of equipment. What's the problem with instructing the Zambia Air Force to get some of their earth-moving equipment to go and do emergency drainage in John Renge there so that water can flow, so that people can stop sleeping in the water and getting all sorts of diseases? It doesn't take anything much. That is a simple instruction. But the president cannot do that because he is not properly informed. Why is he not properly informed? Because he is surrounded by bootlickers, the same bootlickers that he prefers to be surrounded with.
Mr. Mleya, is there anything wrong for one to be a bootlicker if this person is able to deliver development in his area?
You can't develop by being a bootlicker. Let me tell you one thing. For any government to work well, it requires people, first of all, who understand what their jobs are. But also it requires people who are honest enough to be able to say, here we are failing, because it's that acknowledgement that brings solutions. Now, let me tell you one thing. If you are failing and you mask that, you sweep it under the carpet, when are you going to begin to resolve those problems? So, what delivery? There is no delivery. Actually, maybe I can even go back to the earlier questions you asked. Let me give you one key thing which maybe a Zambian person can relate to. When PF came into power, a Zambian who was earning 5,000 kwacha was earning an equivalent of $1,000. Now, that same 5,000 kwacha now is worth around $250. So you can imagine that the economy of an ordinary Zambian has shrunk. So when we talk about delivery, yes, we have some infrastructures there, which is good. We need that infrastructure. But life goes beyond just having those infrastructures. You know, it's like having a house. You build a house, and then you can't provide food, and your children are sleeping on the floor just because you have a house. That's not good enough. As a responsible parent, you have a responsibility to provide that house, but you also have a responsibility to ensure that your children are able to eat in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. They need to take those 3 meals at least as a basic minimum. And that is no longer happening in Zambia. It's becoming harder every day. A 5-liter cooking oil now is around almost 200 kwacha. Sometimes you buy it at 200 kwacha. How many Zambians are getting enough money to be able to buy that 5 liters of cooking oil? This is what we are talking about. So when we talk about delivery, we are talking about inclusive development, inclusive empowerment. It is about every person who wakes up early in the morning be able to be rewarded for the work that they do. It is no longer the case in Zambia. People work hard, but all they get are peanuts out of it. And that's unfair. That's what we want to change as a party. We want to be able to empower every Zambian. Anyone who works hard should be rewarded for their effort.
Let's talk about the issues of corruption. The president here, President Tembo, talked about the president looking at the people that are doing fine, and these are people that he has empowered or people that surround him. Let's talk about corruption. The PF have said, no, don't just accuse us of being corrupt, but provide evidence. Others have said, no, corruption is everywhere, not just with government officials. Do you believe that in Zambia there is corruption? And if there is corruption, what is the plan of PEP in curbing or combating corruption in this country?
Yeah, actually, when the ruling government says it is not only us,
in power, in government,
it's not only us. Yeah, they are saying it's not only us. That's
even those that are in opposition are corrupt.
That is an acknowledgement of failure, because when you give us the instruments of power, you are giving us the responsibility to ensure that this country is governed by the laws. Now, if they know that there are people even in the opposition who are corrupt, what are they doing as the people with the instruments of power to curb that? So the truth of the matter is we have rampant corruption in this country, and it is driven by the people in power. And one of the key reasons is that the people that are closer to the powers are being shielded. So what tends to happen, as we already alluded to, is that the law enforcers are put in a fridge. You know, they are always waiting there to see what instructions are coming. Now, that has been the failure, actually, in terms of fighting corruption. You need institutions that are able to, I need to be able to wake up as a law enforcement officer in the morning, go onto my file, open and check what cases am I working on, without waiting for a phone call from headquarters. I need to be able to know, each law enforcement officer needs to have a file which is working on. That is not the case anymore. The current scenario is that these files have to come from above. It doesn't work like that. So the key thing here is we need to let loose the institutions of governance. This is the key thing. Let loose the institution of governance. And us as people in power, as PEP, one thing that we promise you is that we shall not tolerate and condone corruption. And people who know how we perceive life, how we interact in our normal life, they know that we do not condone corruption.
President Tembo, others have proposed that when you vote for me, issues to do with corruption to be unbailable offense. We are in 2021 and we're looking at the prospects of elections in 2021. What are your plans in fighting corruption?
Yes, so when you look at our manifesto, we have a 10-point plan of how to actually fight corruption. And I must be quick to mention that the issue of making corruption charges non-bearable is not among those our proposed policies for a number of reasons. Because by making, in fact, one of the things we intend to do in terms of our criminal justice reforms is to make all criminal offenses bearable. Because by making certain criminal offenses non-bearable, which I believe are about 3 now, there's treason, there's aggravated robbery, murder, and motor vehicle theft, so about 4 of them. You are basically doing extrajudicial punishment. You are imposing extrajudicial punishment on the accused person. Because if someone is accused of having stolen a vehicle and they are incarcerated for 2 years until the conclusion of their trial, and then it is found out that they are not guilty, then what you would have essentially done is that you would have wrongly incarcerated that individual. So we need to respect our constitution, which requires that every citizen should be deemed innocent and you're proven guilty. Coming to the key reforms that we intend to implement, first of all, number one on our list is the institutional reforms, which my Vice President just spoke about. We are going to allow the institutions of governance, the watchdogs in the government, not the online media, the watchdogs in our government, such as the Office of the Auditor General, such as the Financial Intelligence Center, such as the various law enforcement agencies, to be able to work with unfettered discretion without having their legs held. Apart from that, we are going to ensure that we promote a culture, because the culture part is very important. If you look at the level of corruption that goes on, especially in the private lives of the people, most of it is cultural. It is perceived as fashionable for you to steal from your employer as a way of getting rich. That is where terms like no beura came from. Because way back in the days, in the 80s, people who were drivers of those tankers, the fuel tankers, would sell their fuel, the fuel in their tankers. Maybe they sell 90% of it. Then they go and beura their truck. They go and flip it. And when it falls in the ground, you can't tell how much of the fuel went in the ground. So they get that money and they go and build a big bar in the compound. And people say, wana beura tanker. You understand? So it is a huge cultural issue. And changing culture has a lot to do with you as a leader, you as a president. What kind of values are you inculcating into the people? You know, as a president, you actually have a lot of influence on the citizens, especially the young upcoming citizens. If you run your government and you run your personal life in a manner that exudes confidence, in a manner that exudes high levels of integrity, then people will emulate you. The young ones will emulate you. But if you run your government in a manner whereby your ministry delivers expired drugs, and some people might have even died, and leaking condoms, some people might have been infected, and leaking gloves, some medical personnel might have been infected with COVID and all sorts of unimaginable diseases. And you as a president, you are just quiet there. You're quiet, you're just looking around, you're quiet. And then the people will say, this person obviously tolerates and possibly promotes corruption. So you cannot fight corruption when you as a president, your actions are not consistent with fighting corruption. So for me as president of this republic, my first job will be to ensure that I'm a role model to the citizens, that my attitudes, my actions are such that I don't tolerate corruption. We saw what happened when Revi Mwanawasa was president. He exuded public confidence in the people that he did not tolerate corruption in his government. And what happened? The rest of the civil service fell in line to ensure that they are in compliance with the wishes and values of the president. It doesn't take much of panel beating the civil service for them to fall in line. It just takes you as a president of a republic being clear and being firm in the issues which have to do with fighting corruption.
Mr. Mle, we have to go to your concluding remarks.
I think in my concluding remarks, I would just say that we've presented ourselves to the people of Zambia. I know they've been complaining that there are no alternatives around. What should we do? We've come with a plan on the table, a very clear plan written. It's up to the Zambian people to save themselves. It's not about us, the politicians. We've presented ourselves as an option. Let them come forward, look at our documents, and this is where the solution is for the country. So maybe before I leave, I can leave my number also to the viewers who are watching us. They can reach me on 0977 33 6928. 0977 33 6928.
As we go.
Yes, I think the Zambian people have been suffering for some time now. And I think an opportunity has presented itself for the Zambian people to actually redeem themselves. And redeeming themselves, the starting point to redeeming themselves is to ensure that they have a proper, sound, and competent government in office. And that government cannot come by itself. I'm sure almost each and every Zambian out there, They want a good government. They want a competent government. They want a government that will not tolerate corruption. But such a government will not come by itself. It can only come about if you, the Zambian people, make an effort, however little that effort is. And in this regard, you have a viable option here in myself as a potential president of this republic and my vice president as a potential Republican vice president. You need to make an effort, no matter how small, to actualize this possibility. If it means you reaching out to your neighbor and telling your neighbor to say, I think we subscribe to what President Sean Tembo stands for and what the Patriots for Economic Progress stands for, share that with your neighbor. And ask your neighbor to share with their neighbor. If it means you coming forward and contributing a two-kwacha towards our effort, do that. But whatever the case, make an effort towards the realization of a competent and committed government. Otherwise, such a government cannot come by itself. And maybe just to share my contacts, those who might want to get in touch, that's 09711958870. That is 09711958870.
Thank you so much. I've been talking to Sean Tembo, 2021 presidential candidate under the Patriots for Economic Progress, as well as his running mate and Vice President Henry Mulea. This is the Zambian Yellow family. This has been the assignment. My name is Kelvin Tabolach Fokro. Many thanks to Mavuto Puri, my producer as well as director. Until next week, good night.